Negativity is often thought to be a bad thing, but really, is it? I mean, if you didn't have a negative terminal on your battery of your car, it wouldn't start in the morning. You'd be late for work, your boss would sack you. If there weren't negative temperatures, I wouldn't be able to enjoy a lovely ice cream like this on a sunny day. And if you didn't have negative space in photography, you wouldn't be able to enjoy pictures like this, or this, or this. Yeah, thanks. So what is this negative space thing? How does it actually work? And what subjects does it work for? These are all questions that I get asked quite a lot. Well, as you've seen in those photos just now, you can use negative space with people, you can use it with landscapes, you can use it with all sorts of things. So probably the best thing to do is for us to go and have a little wander around and see if we can find a couple of negative space shots, somewhere a little bit quieter, and I can explain how it all works. Here's a lovely piece of negative space. I mean, look, you've got all that stonework and you've got the graphic element of the bench down here at the bottom. I think that works really, really well. It's a nice quiet sort of an image. The stones are all sort of higgledy-piggledy and the light's changing, but with the sun shining across them, you've got the shadows, and then you've got the graphic square straight lines of the bench down here. So that's a great piece of negative space where you can use it by placing someone into it, or just as it is. I think it would work really, really well as an image. It's a shame about this fire hydrant sign we've got just here, but that's what Photoshop is for. You can remove things like that. But also, you could just put a person in front of it. So if you were out doing a fashion shoot type of a thing, you can always put someone in front of that, or a portrait, and all of a sudden you've lost the hydrant and you've just got a nice sort of a portraity picture, and it's quiet and it's got space in it. Now I know you're saying, but Mike, you're really, really tiny in the picture, we can't really see you. But that's the point. Human beings are really quite vain. Our eyes are drawn to human beings. And so you will look straight to me. Now, if this was an image you were going to print and put large on the wall, it'll look absolutely fantastic, because the fact that I'm small and it occupies a big space, it gives it a really quiet, peaceful sort of a nature. So the things to look for are stuff like big open spaces, graphic elements. They work really, really well, and they give you this lovely, quiet, peaceful sort of an image. Let's just have a quick look and see what it would look like if we crop this shot in tight so that I am filling the frame from sort of top to bottom. See what that would look like. So even though this is still a really nice image because of the human shape, the contrast with the stone, and then the graphic of this bench, it's a much, much tighter, it's much more portraity rather than sort of scenery-ish. I kind of miss the big open space, even though this still looks really rather good. Let's just let it breathe again and go back. Oh, there we go, I can breathe again. I do just like this sort of empty, spacious, quiet sort of a feeling. I don't even like being in a small room with the door closed, so this is a bit of me. So without further ado, let's go and get a camera and go and see if we can find some little things. I'll just talk you through how to shoot a bit of negative space with your camera. Negative space isn't just for big open spaces such as boats on the water or a tree on a hilltop. You can use it for much smaller, more delicate items as well. I kind of like these little flowers sitting here in the stonework. I think they look amazing. I love the little lilac-y colour going on against the sort of grey of the stone. So how do we go about it? Well, the first thing you've got to do is to find yourself some of these little flowers that have got a bit of space around them. I mean, these ones aren't much use at all, are they? Because they're all sort of bunged up, they've got other flowers all around them. Blasted things driving me nuts. Anyway, I kind of like these ones, just here. You see this little clump of flowers here? They're all on their own. I'll try to get that to fly up there. There we go. These ones, they're all on their own down here. We've got plenty of space all around them. Now, these flowers here, they're not going to be in the shot because you can use your focal length a little bit longer and just kind of crop them away. And there's plenty of space there. So the shot I'm thinking about in my head isn't a landscape view like we did down there with the bench. This is an upright shot. So we're going to have the flowers small at the bottom, and then we're going to give them space to breathe up above. And I think I'm just going to have them fairly central, but right down near the bottom with lots of space up here. So let's go through it with the camera. How do we set this shot up? Well, think about it. The first thing is, do you need lots of depth of field? No, of course you don't. There isn't any depth going on here. You've got what? The front of the flowers there and the stonework maybe an inch behind them. So you only need a little tiny bit of depth of field, so you don't need a little tiny aperture. But I would go for a middle aperture if you can. I'm going to shoot this using aperture priority because I just find it so much easier. So I've got the camera switched on, I've got my white balance set to, well, actually sunny, because it's kind of sunny. Even though I'm in shade, I could put it in shady, but I'd rather color correct it afterwards. Aperture, I'm more interested in the composition, and that will then to start give me my aperture so I can get the shutter speed. So let's have a look at my composition and look through the camera. I can just sort of move backwards and forwards. I want the lens longish. I've got a 60mm focal length set on a DX sensor, for those of you who are going to worry about that sort of thing. Just move your focal length till it looks right. Don't start worrying about the numbers too much. Okay. That's nice, that's nice. I'm going to come back a bit more, I think. Try and give it some more space. Here we go. And that little blaze of colour against the stone is going to really work. Okay, so now I've looked at that, I now know that I need about a 60mm focal length. So I'm going to need at least a 60th of a second shutter speed to ensure that I don't get camera shake and a blurry picture. So looking through the viewfinder, I can see that f5.6 I've got 100. If I 6.3 gives me an 80th. I'm going to go with 6.3. That gives me an 80th of a second. I know the shutter speed is going to be fast enough to freeze the movements of the camera so I can get the shot nice and sharp. There we go. ISO I have got set at a 250. If I went down a little bit, sure, the image quality would be a bit better, but my shutter speed would be a little bit slower, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm all set up and ready to take the shot. So the settings are a sunny white balance, 250 ISO. My exposure is an 80th of a second at f6.3. Now I just kind of move the camera around. Now to put it in position, if I just look at it how I see the world with my eyes, they're right in the middle like that. It's really boring, isn't it? So I just look at it with it in the middle and then tilt the front of the camera up. It's this up tilt motion like that, and that moves my little flowers to the bottom. I have put my single point autofocus at the bottom of the frame so that it's going to focus on the flowers when I press the shutter button. So I'm now lining it up, single point autofocus, press the shutter, there's a little beep, it's focused, squeeze the shot. And there you go. It really is that simple. Now, that's a nice delicate little sort of an example. Why don't we go out and see if we can find a larger, more open space, and I'll talk you through one of those shots as well. We were just driving along to our final location where I just wanted to show you a final shot when I spotted that crane up on the skyline up there. If you imagine what it's like to be all on your own up on top of a tower crane, it's a great opportunity for a little bit of negative space. Now, you see these boat masts, they're a little bit annoying because they're near the bottom of the crane. So you need to think two things here. One, raise yourself up so that we can make the masts appear lower. And also this has to be shot while the sun is against the crane. It's the light that's going to make it work. So I need to get my skates on. So get higher up. I'm going to climb up on top of this bit of wall here. Come with me. There we go. That's better already. Ah. Now, what's the shot? Again, I don't need loads of depth of field. All I need is a fairly flat depth of field. I'm going to use a middle aperture of about f8. I'm still using aperture priority. I'm just going to line up the shot, that out of the way. Here we go. Focus on the crane, and then we're making little movements of the zoom to sort of crop out the tops of the mast while the sun is still out. Let me put this stupid red balloon here. Here we go. Right. Focus on the crane, raise the camera up a little bit, and we've just got crane against the sky, waiting for a seagull to get out of the shot because I don't want him in there. Go away, seagull. There it is, like that. Awesome, that's a really lonely up in the sky kind of a shot. Maybe a crane driver feels like that, I don't know, but it's a bit of negative space. See if we can find that last shot I was on about. I do seem to like a sturdy bench, don't I? This is sort of turning into the Mike Likes a Sturdy Bench show. There's a reason I'm here, and I'll tell you that in a minute, but first let's just revisit a few negative space images. Think of a sunset. Now a sunset is probably negative space in its most original form, because are you actually photographing the sun, or are you photographing the space around it? All those magical colours going on in the sky and the clouds. If you didn't have the space around the sun, you wouldn't be able to capture them, and it probably wouldn't work quite so well. This picture of a little girl laying on the step at a beach hut. Now I could have come in much tighter onto Layla, but then it would just have been a likeness of Layla. But by giving her some negative space and including a little bit of the structure of the beach hut, the sort of regularity of the straight lines, it's kind of confined Layla within her own childish ideas and dreams and thoughts. It's giving her that space which makes the picture quiet, which is what Layla was being at that moment. And let's just go back to this one again, the one with the two little boats on the water. This is one of my favourite pictures actually. The original shot which I took looked like this. Now, as you can see, the masts in the background are a terrible distraction. I wanted this image to be a quiet, peaceful image because it was so quiet down there, and I just loved the reflection of the little boats in the water. But the masts in the background, they just kind of made it noisy, and it didn't need to have the sky included. So by tilting the camera down a little bit, managed to lose that noise and put the boats at the top, and now it is very quiet and peaceful indeed. It's also notable because of the composition. The boats are at the top, not the bottom. I love this picture. Quite a few people have said to me it's weird because the sky's in the wrong place. That's also another lesson to be had in the fact that there isn't really a right or a wrong composition. There's the one that you like, and if you like it, it's brilliant, and that one's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. So what am I doing here? Well, the original plan was that we'd have some sunlight going on, and I was thinking about the background, the sea, the sky, and the bench in the foreground. And I wanted to show you another little thing with this as well. But of course, best laid plans of mice and men, we've got a bit of murk now. But never mind, let's go ahead. I'm going to set the shot up and we'll have a look at it. Let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so we've got our shot set up. We've got our bench, we've got lots of empty space. So that's a beginning, isn't it? But think about where you position things. I know we've been through it, but it doesn't hurt to just kind of look at this once again. I think this shot will work an awful lot better if we've got the bench lower in the frame. Now, in the original idea, if the sun was out, you'd be able to see the horizon, you'd be able to see the sea, you'd be able to see a lot more of the sky. It might just about glimpse out actually in a minute. There are a few breaks in the clouds, and if it does, I'm going to have to be fast, so I'll talk you through this bit now, and then hopefully we'll get the shot in a minute. So let's have a look at the shot again by putting the bench lower and lining up the horizon with the seat at the bottom. Let's see what that looks like. I'll get out the way first so that you can compare it. So there we go. We've now got the composition reset. We've moved the bench slightly closer into the middle of the picture, which is something which you'll probably think you're always telling us not to do. Also, when you're working with negative space, it is often a lot nicer to have something much lower down in the frame. You can put it near the top like we did with the boats. Excuse me, that works brilliantly. So what have we got going on here? We've got the grass down the bottom. If you can see through the murk, the horizon is running just above the top of the bench, probably round about here. The reason you want to be careful with things like that is if the horizon line collides with this harsh line of the bench, somehow it just doesn't work quite so well. You need that little piece of separation to keep it going. If we had the sun out, it would be absolutely glorious because we've got some lovely textures in the sky, but it's just not going to happen, I don't think. But this is good for you. This will help you imagine things. So if I was going to take this picture, what kind of exposure would I use? And the reason I'm saying that is because I know a lot of you would ask. The correct exposure is the one that works for where you are. I can't tell you what exposure to use because I don't know the light situation. If the sun was shining right now, it would be a very different experience. It would be a very different exposure. All you need is a middle aperture because, well, there is a lot of depth of field, but if you're a fair distance away, your depth of field will be big anyway. You then set your shutter speed according to the aperture that you've chosen. And then you set your ISO according to the shutter speed that you get, because you want to make sure your shutter speed is fast enough that you don't get camera shake if you're not using a tripod. These are the building blocks of photography. They kind of clunk together like Lego bricks. And by understanding what they do, you can kind of build your own picture in your head and then create your camera settings. Something that works really, really well when you do have a bit of a dull scene like this is to introduce something man-made into it, because it gives your eye somewhere to look. It gives you a point of focus, if you like, particularly if it's something with a nice, bright, vivid colour. So all I can say to you is, I hope the breeze stops blowing and the blasted thing goes upright, but enjoy the view.